Good evening, back for our Sunday edition of Meteorology Lab. And we've got another quiet day. We're just not getting into the bulk of that southern stream pattern that we've had. In fact, we're under a ridge this weekend, so not very much going on right now. Just a little bit of this low cloud, a little bit of stratus and stratocumulus up at about cumulus and cumulonimbus. Okay, let's try this again. Cumulus and stratocumulus up at about 5,000 feet or so. Sorry, I'm a little bit distracted here because, there we go. Messing around with my switchboard here. But all we've got down south, a couple of wind advisories down in New Mexico. This one's a red flag warning. And then you go up north and we've got a couple of freeze warnings. And then this little area here in southern Nebraska. This is a severe thunderstorm warning. We've had one little cell there in central Nebraska. It goes severe, but we just don't have the moisture in place in that area. So looking at those dew points, we see those are in the 40s and low 50s in this area because we've had the dry line move through that area. So if we actually analyze this map, we're going to come up with a chart that looks maybe a little bit like this here. I did that since it looks kind of stationary. And then we pick it up across northwest Kansas here is a cold front. And then the dry line, well, we see a lot of 60s around the Wichita area. And then a couple of 60s around the Kansas City area. So that'll bring our boundary kind of like this. And where does it intersect the front? Well, we got 59 here, 48 here, 51. I might be inclined to go something like this here. So that would indicate a triple point somewhere from around the Omaha area to western Iowa in here. So the better moisture is confined to this region out in Iowa and Missouri. So this little storm back here is kind of in the dry area behind the front, kind of working into the dry slot. And just kind of an update there. I think the front is going to be a little bit more like this here. Because you notice we see the fine line on the radar plot here. So it's definitely a good idea to look at your radar when you're doing analysis, and you can see it, for example, here on the Hastings radar. There's the boundary right there. And the spectrum width shows that even better. So you can kind of work that into your analysis. And one of the things I'm going to do in the next version of Digital Atmosphere is allow spectrum width to be plotted horizontally, because I don't think there's any way to do that right now using the tools that exist. So you can imagine the gains to be had going from this to that. So that would be very good for the analysis process there. Okay, for the reflectivity, we got the storm down in the Hebron-Geneva area, and that's topping out at about 40,000 feet. We've got a severe thunderstorm warning on that, and that's for golf ball-sized hail. So primary hazard there being hail. And we see the usual characteristics of a severe thunderstorm. We've got a strong reflectivity gradient on the inflow side. And then we can check for a meso up at higher tilts. And yeah, we've got something here. We have to keep in mind the radar is off to the west. So the radar beam is kind of moving like this. So this right here is motion away from the radar, and this is toward the radar. And let me adjust the storm motion vector here real quick. Okay, so we've certainly got a circulation in that storm. We have about 43 out and 29 in, so that's going to be about almost 70 knots of rotation. Very broad meso right there. And so we place our marker right in the center, and we can see that this is probably the updraft here. The mesocyclone is usually correlated with the updraft, and there appears to be a lot of rain in that updraft right now. And this is a little RFD area right here. So right now, probably the strongest wind threat right there. And then down at lower tilts, we see the velocity declines quite a bit. In fact, we've even got, this is interesting, we've got a little bit of a convergent signature here. So sometimes that can be correlated with an increase in intensity. Okay, so there's a storm right there, and we've got about 73 dBZs in that, so certainly going to be some hail on the ground there. Okay, let's go to the large-scale charts. And we'll start out with a 250 millibar analysis here. And remember, this is for this morning. So looking at the legend here, Sunday, and just off the edge, 12Z right there. So it's always a good idea to kind of double check that stuff. Okay, before we go much further, let me just take a look at the chat here. We've got Sue M checking in, and Andrew and Carl Berghoff got his camera charging for this evening's storms. He says they're refiring in central Minnesota. Missed several good bolts this early evening. Kevin McKinney is here, and Fun with Tech, Alexi and Michael Burrell, Ryan Myers, and Carl Berghoff, Eddie W., Jason Flood, Ron Chalfont in Southern California there. Ryan Toomey's checking out the storm there. Sarah Wood there in Indiana, reporting partly sunny in the 70s there today, very windy. And a few rain showers where Ryan is in southern Florida. Vegas Helicam, that's a new name there. Mark in Las Vegas. Glad you could join us here. And Tree Nelson is here, and Southern Rebel. Probably right down the road here from Texas, perhaps. Okay, let me check my text. Sometimes I have some friends watching the webcast, and I'm just checking to make sure that our... Okay. Sometimes if there's audio problems, I'll take a look on there and make sure there's not any texts about that. Okay. So we got a pretty good long wave trough off the west coast, and the shape of it is maybe something like this here. And superimposed on that, a couple of waves. A couple of large waves moving through the flow. And then off the coast, we have this very strong jet streak. 110 knots there at 250 millibars. No sign of the subtropical jet at this time. We have this max here off the Bahamas. That's moving out of the picture. So Texas, looks like that's coming mostly under the influence of this polar front jet. And let's see where that polar front jet is. I think we're looking at something like that. So from about the Las Vegas area to the Four Corners, then up to the Dakotas. So that's helping to sustain that storm over Nebraska there that we're seeing this evening. Now I am seeing some 70 knot flow here. So maybe in fact we are picking up the subtropical jet. Let me take a look here. I'm seeing a little bit of an anticyclonic curvature to that. So that's one indicator. And we also see the flow increase from 80 to 90. So yep, we're getting the subtropical jet starting to enter the picture here. And you can see it's kind of phased with the polar front jet out in the Rockies there. And this anticyclonic curvature kind of in phase with the cyclonic curvature up north. This gives us a pattern called diffluence in the upper levels. And that's one of the early predictors that severe thunderstorm forecasters used in the 60s and 70s. They would see the strongly diverging flow aloft. We don't use that so much anymore because the problem with using diffluence like this is that's offset by speed convergence. You got very strong winds most of the time when this happens, and it's heading into an area of weak winds. So you have convergence offsetting the diffluence. So again, we have to go back to diagnostics and look at vorticity and even convergence charts to find stuff like that. We can't depend on pattern analysis like that so much anymore. And you'll notice here, 500 millibars, this is 18,000 feet. We do see the polar front jet from the Four Corners up to Minnesota, but you'll notice that the subtropical jet does not show up so much here, because that's an upper tropospheric feature there. Okay, satellite photos. This shows that thunderstorm complex in southern Nebraska. It shows where it came from, so basically around the North Platte area. And it looks like it's feeding off a little layer of moisture out along that frontal boundary there. And we can also see that we've got one little storm popping up around the Wichita area. And then this here is the dry line. And we see a couple of maybe turkey towers that tried to go up earlier today in southwest Oklahoma. Probably due to intense heating in that area. And we can see this a little bit closer on the GO 16, the GOES-R imagery. And this is from, again, the Kachemanvetter.site. And again, if you all want to take a look at that, there's the website. And they've got some good satellite data from GOES-R. You can see those overshooting tops there, southeast of Kearney. And the upper level winds are moving like this. So this storm has a little bit of back shear here on the upwind side. And here you can see that little limited layer of moisture out ahead of the storm. And that moisture is going to be kind of on the weak side, so we're going to see high bases with a storm like that. And that's also going to reduce the tornado potential due to the LCLs being on the high side. And there's a quick animation of our Grand Island cell. And toward the end, you see some very high tops there. Okay, so that's one of the last frames there, and you see a little bit of sunlight hitting the top, just southeast of Grand Island. Okay, then we'll work out the frontal analysis real quick, and no surprise where the cold front is there in southern Nebraska. And it does get a little bit harder to find as we go south. So in this case, looks like our front is through the Albuquerque area and then around Phoenix. And it's possible that we have a dry line out ahead of the system. Well, definitely out in Kansas. But there's a high likelihood of it in Texas also. But we're not going to find that on the thickness analysis. We have to go to the surface charts for that. So going down south very quickly to find where the dry line might be tonight. Very easy to find. And you can see we've got a very high moisture contrast. We have 6-degree dew points in Lubbock, 18 at Childress, contrasting sharply with these low 60s in the Frederick and Lawton area. Okay, we'll take a look. Take a couple soundings here. We'll try Omaha. Now, I remember yesterday we were looking at a possibility of some storms going up in western Iowa, and I'd pointed out that it was going to be probably a late show. And of course, I was going off of the models there, but they were certainly signaling that we were not going to see much initiation before 0 to 03Z. So we can try to take a look at why on the soundings here. So I'm going to click Omaha. And we can see that the problem here is limited moisture. We start out with mid-50s dew points at the surface, and the moisture declines as we go further north. And we can see that the wind flow is veered just off the surface. So we're bringing in drier air aloft. So maybe there was some truth in what the Canadian model was saying. You remember yesterday the Canadian model was bringing in that dry slot across this area here. Okay, so there's the the mid-50s isodrosotherm. Here's the 60-degree isodrosotherm. It's a very pronounced dry slot, and this looks a whole lot different from what the NAM was forecasting. It was showing a bunch of moisture coming together in this area here, and the Canadian model was not showing that. So maybe next time we need to kind of pay attention to what the Canadian model is showing. So if we try to lift a parcel with this air, you can see we've got a lot of capping. There's all that convective inhibition there. That's very significant. That's probably what we would call a nuclear cap there. And then above that, we do have some steep lapse rates above that. So if we were able to clear the cap somehow, we'd probably have some capes in the 500 to 1,000 range. Okay, we'll take a look at the dynamics here at 500 millibars with the heights and vorticity. There's the chart for tonight. We seem to be missing the height lines, but we can definitely see the short waves. So a pretty pronounced one from about Oklahoma City up to Grand Island. So we've had a lot of lift working across this area here today, but not quite enough to remove that cap. So overnight we're going to see that wave working eastward towards the Mississippi River Valley area. A couple more waves coming in behind. And then we have one other wave moving into the Oklahoma and Wichita area by morning. So a little bit of upper energy working across that region early tomorrow morning, but nothing south of Oklahoma City. And then it looks like we'll finally see that start to change maybe later during the day and into tomorrow night. Then we see a pretty prominent wave coming in from the west on Tuesday night. So when we do the webcast on Tuesday night, we're going to be seeing that wave approaching this area here, and we know that the ridge is here. Here's the trough. So maybe some sort of surface system moving through the Four Corners area. And it looks like the main influence of that will be on the Oklahoma and Kansas area. Okay. Then just a quick look at the 850 millibar analysis from the model. Okay, there's the 0Z 850. Can definitely pick out that front right here. So that's the 850 millibar front, and again, we can't find the dry line with this. Given that the temperature is pretty homogeneous along this line, we can probably go ahead and use relative humidity in this case. So this would give us a dry line of something like this here. So from about west of Des Moines to St. Joseph and down Oklahoma City, and then down to about Brownwood, Texas. So we've got a little bit of a low-level jet in place over the I-35 corridor. Let's see what it does tonight. It veers, and we see that veering due to the departure of the main wave moving eastward across the Great Lakes. And then we see the burst of cold air coming in from the Central Plains here. So this is going to be mostly due to anticyclogenesis in this region here. So this does not look very good for any thunderstorms. If we do get any storms, it's going to be due to forcing along that cold front right there. Then we do see a little bit of backing to the flow by tomorrow night. There's going to be a front hanging down in the area, so chances of rain will probably go up. But it doesn't look like we have the good dynamics for any organized severe weather. Okay, some good cyclogenesis out west, and we see the flow coming out around to the east on Tuesday night. And there's the low-level jet picking up again. And we see a very classic appearance here on Wednesday night. A little bit on the weak side, but again, it's pointing towards Iowa and eastern Kansas here. And this is pretty interesting up here. Looks like a 50-knot low-level jet established over the Dakotas on Thursday night. So we'll keep an eye on that when we go into the GFS, and looks like we're under southerly flow for a good part of the time here in Texas. So I think we're going to get into a slightly more active weather pattern here later in the week. Okay, let's see what happens to our thunderstorm out there out in Nebraska for the rest of tonight. This is a high-resolution rapid refresh. That model is going for a eastward push on that storm. Then we see a more organized area of storms developing in northern Kansas there, around the Salina, Topeka area. That'll move into the Kansas City area around midnight to 1 in the morning there. So moving eastward is an MCS, and that'll get into Illinois around dawn. And you can see it start to break up already, and it's starting to outrun the moisture. And the morning hours are not the morning hours after dawn are not a good time to support these MCSs. They tend to dissipate by mid-morning. Okay, then we get to the end of that, and we'll just go ahead and head on into the GFS and look at the forecast over the next few days. So there's our pattern tonight, and we can see at the synoptic scale, we've got our cold front originating from a large synoptic scale low in northern Iowa. There's our warm front there over Wisconsin. So obviously that's going to continue moving eastward. And then we've got the tail end of that out here in the Four Corners area, so we'll keep an eye on that. Now, we saw from the low-level flow that we were getting the arrival of some anticyclogenesis out west. So that's not going to be very conducive to redevelopment back here. Maybe on Tuesday, but you can see it's mostly dominated by northerly flow here. So we're just pushing the cold air mass southward into the Dallas area tomorrow morning. So by tomorrow night, when we do the forecast, looks like our main surface low out over the Milwaukee area. This looks to be our cold front, and we've got a little bit of a inverted trough appearance here in Texas. It looks like we're starting to bring up some moisture up to that boundary, so probably some good showers and storms to look at tomorrow night. And they get going pretty well towards the early evening, and the models show a little bit of dissipation there towards morning. The main system up north keeps on moving towards the northeast, and we get stuck with this stationary boundary down in Texas. So probably on that morning or that opening time lapse, I'll probably have some good footage to show. Finally have something to look at there. Okay, in Texas, we come under the influence of this high pressure area around midweek, and we're going to get kind of a cool push, kind of bringing that boundary on through. Some redevelopment out to the west with the next wave coming in, and you can see things get pretty busy out in California towards the end of the week there. And it looks like probably by the weekend we'll have a chance of maybe some organized storms in the Central Plains here. You can see that frontal boundary up to the north there in Nebraska. So possibly a chance for some organized, little bit of a chase activity there in northern Kansas. Then our next big system comes in early the following week around the 17th or 18th. So it looks like chances for severe weather start to go back up around the 16th, 17th, and 18th there. Okay, since we don't have a whole lot of weather going on right now, that's probably about as far as I want to go. 30 minutes is probably good for that. Otherwise, I'm going to start putting you all to sleep there. Let me take a look at the chat here and see what we got going on. Ryan says, loud and clear on the audio. Yeah, I ran through some of the microphone settings there, and I think I might have cleared up what happened last night there. Felix says, California finally settling down. Governor Brown officially declared no drought in California. That's definitely some good news there. Mike 1 checking in from Benbrook, Texas. They're southwest of Fort Worth. Windy in Denver, where Mike Estwick is. Ronald Martinez says, yesterday in Central California, there was bottle cap-sized hail. It's a new one, bottle cap-sized hail. Have to add that to the chart there. Mike Estwick says, how long should a forecaster spend on the hand analysis before starting the forecast process? That really depends on the situation. On a situation like today where the coverage is rather isolated, you don't really have to spend much time at all, just kind of run through the charts, kind of like what I did just now. When we have a large severe weather outbreak where you have a couple watch boxes, then I would recommend probably spending a good half hour on that analysis. So it really depends on the situation. And once we start getting into a active weather pattern, then I'll kind of give you some examples of that. We'll start a few severe weather situations from scratch during the day, and we'll advertise that on Twitter probably about an hour or two in advance when I'm thinking about starting up the stream, and I'll kind of show you how that analysis process comes together. Lightning strike detected out over the oceans. Ronald Martinez says they were under a severe thunderstorm watch in Stockton. Yep, we had that front coming through that area. Let's see here. I see a lot of thanks here. I paused there for a second because I was thinking, man, did I just sign off or something? But anyway, no biggie there. But yeah, I appreciate the comments there, and yeah, that's true. I can only do so much on one webcast. If I start going into detail on every part of the country, then that's going to kind of drag out the broadcast, and I try to make these kind of short and sweet and kind of pinpoint on the areas of interest. So not much going on in California or Texas, so even here where I am, I don't really focus on that area very much until things get active again. Okay, well, that's about all I got for tonight. We'll see you tomorrow, and things will start getting active again finally. And if we have any severe weather coming up, then, we'll do those special analysis segments there. Anyway, thanks, and we'll see you tomorrow.